All right, we're back. It is COMP397. It's summer 2016, and it's week 9, part 1 of our broadcast. Again, we have lots to cover and very little time. My name is Tom. I'm your instructor for today, and what we're going to be building is games. But in order for us to do that, we need to build a boilerplate. Last week, if you remember, if I go to GitHub, and hopefully this won't mess up, and if I go to Centennial College, which is our GitHub link, you can see that we had, if I filter on COMP397, you can see that we built lesson 8. And this is what the last thing we did. Now we have several other things. I've got some other example assignment or repos that I got up here. And we're going to trudge along a little bit differently this semester. One is I want to create a boilerplate for 2016, so the 2016 boilerplate, for us to get going. And that's going to mean we have to build it up in terms of what is a state machine. That's what I want to do for the first part of this day. We also at some point have to talk about the assignment, which is assignment number 4. I'm probably going to start with that one to tell you what it's all what it's all about and when it's due and all that stuff. And I kind of mentioned it last week, but and you were kind of given it last week, and I'm sure no one started it. So and I even looked at it. So I got to do that today. I also got to announce that I will be lenient with your, like I said earlier, with some people that are here. Your assignment number 3, if you haven't handed it in, leniency will be there for you. Don't worry. It's not going to be like today and it's closed, right? So again, bear with me with the stuff that's going to happen. There's lots of stuff to cover, not a lot of time, and let's get this stuff rolling. What I'm going to be doing today is building up our boilerplate, but at the same time showing off some really cool GitHub features that we need to use as we collaborate together, right? So let's take a look at the assignment first. So assignment number 4 is what it is. So if we look at last week, did I give it this week or last week? I probably had it in place from the week before. Let me just make sure. One of those weeks. Mail pilot build is here. I'll probably give it on the exam. There we go. All right, so here's what it looks like. And if I was going to look at assignment number 4, because you guys normally would be assignment number 3, but the way your schedule is slightly off. So tentatively, right now we're sitting on week 9. Tentatively, it's due by week 11. So you have a couple of weeks to get this done. It'll be due. I get tentatively by the Monday. We may have to move that date a little bit. Just being honest, because of what's happening with your assignment number 3. But really what you're going to be doing is, and for those people, who's done COMP305 with me? Anybody in the room? So people who've done COMP305 with me, right, you'll remember this one as, kind of the side scroller. And this was actually what we did before what we would, kind of get together with COMP305. COMP305 is Game Programming 1. And like I said to you last week, this is kind of like my hello world. When I make games, I make this one. Right? Why? Because I know how to make this one very well. And when I move to other platforms, Unreal or Unity or wherever I make games, it's almost like you have a gist of how the game is going to go. So this is my hello world, if you will. All right. So what we're going to be building is we're going to be making this thing called Mail Pilot, and Mail Pilot's going to be a little game that has a plane and a couple of clouds that come down, 3 clouds, and there's an island. Right, that with a continuously scrolling background, right? It looks like an ocean. The plane's going to go over the ocean, and what's going to happen is when the plane connects with the islands, you get some points. When the plane connects with the clouds, it gets damaged. Right, that's what's going to happen. Very, very simple game with a scrolling background, score, the whole thing. We're also going to be using our state machine, which we're going to introduce today, to make that go. So if you notice the requirements, there'll be a menu scene, so start or exit, one of those kind of things. An instruction scene, which you're going to have to build, right? So how do you play the game? Your game. Your game is not going to be Mail Pilot. So even though I'm going to show you Mail Pilot, I don't want any one of my assets back. So please don't give me Mail Pilot. I don't want any kind of racing game. Okay, so no car game with a road, right? Please don't give me those things. I've just got so many of those over the last years, and they're really bad because the cars overlap each other, right? Like other cars don't exist, that kind of thing. Cars are not clouds. Clouds can overlap. Cars, they need to crash into each other, right? And unfortunately, it's hard for people to do that. So think about something else, some kind of other game where you can do a side scroller. The game I'm going to show you is a top-down top scroller, and I'm going to give you all the code for it. Actually, there's some code already on there on GitHub right now. If you want to follow along, you can actually look at the code. And I'm going to kind of go along the same route that I did before. Again, It's going to be slightly different as we learn. We do different things, I've learned. So I'm going to do slightly different things than I did last semester, the semester before, and the semester before that, right? So it's not going to be exactly what's going to be online, but very close to what you're going to see. I'm also going to give you assets, and the assets for the build that we're going to be doing today are all up online already. And if you want to see where those are, if you want to download them now to save some time, you can certainly do that. They are, if I mount Centennial College, and if I filter for assets, you can see that I got several different kinds of assets. Here's one of them. It's called MP assets. That's MailPilot assets. Please go here, and if you download this project, it's just assets for audio, for sprites. So I've got the plane sprite. This is what the plane is going to look like, little plane, right? You can download the assets so that way you don't have to go and find them or try and match them, and you can follow along. So please go download MP assets under Centennial College, all right? So we're going to do that today, all right? Okay, going back to this, so you're going to have your own assets, because these are my assets, so please don't use my stuff. You can get your assets anywhere you like, okay? You don't have to get them, as an example, from, for me, you don't have to make them. If you want to use the Unity asset store to get them from there and use them for your web games, it's perfectly fine. It's all right. You can get them from anywhere you like, right? So this has nothing to do, our project has nothing for you to do with asset creation. I'm not going to say, create all your assets and prove that they're all yours. Okay, that's not what this project is about. This project is about getting all your assets working with code. That's really what it's about. And also, I'm going to show you how to do a top scroll. You're going to do a side scroll. So you're basically going to take my project, flip it on its side, and make it your own game. Totally different game. Okay. So it's not impossible to do it. I'm going to demo the whole project, my project, from A to Z. Like, you'll know how to do scoring and everything else. You can use even some of the same techniques that we're going to be using in class to kind of include in your code. One thing to note is this. You're going to use the MailPilot project template that I'm going to provide, and you will be creating this original 2D side-scrolling arcade game from left to right. One thing I'm going to allow you to do for this one, just to make it easier, is combine forces with somebody else. So you don't have to do this on your own. It's not an individual project. If you want to, you can work with somebody else. All right, one other person. Okay, it's not going to be like 3, 4, 5 other people. Okay, it's not that. Pick one other person if you want to work with them, and to make your job a little easier, to kind of put this thing together. The directions, each line of the assignment gives you directions, just like you've seen before. Like the assignments that the previous professor gave you were my assignments, but he stripped some stuff out of there. So, so again, your menu scene. Menu scene is like the first thing you'll see. It's a menu screen. Think about a scene as a screen. Comes up, and that's what you see, a menu, right? Next thing is, off the menu screen, you'll have a few options, which will be instructions, start, or let's say exit. I think those are the 3 things I want in your menu scene, right? Your instruction scene is a separate scene that you can go to from your menu scene. So we'll draw that out later on. And then there'll be the gameplay scene where all the game will play. I don't need you to make more than 1 level for this game. This game is a single level game, right? So you play it, you give your player 5 lives as an example. The player loses his lives, the game is over, okay? It's a very straightforward kind of game, right? You get points, like I said, for crossing over islands. You get hurt, lose lives, if you hit a cloud. Think about the clouds as big storm clouds, and they're killing your plane, okay? We have to imagine, because there's going to be some special effects in the beginning, our first version, we cannot include. For example, explosions. In the first version of the game, can't include those right away because we have to build that stuff up, right? And I have to show you how to do animations and everything else. We're going to use MailPilot as a vehicle to add components onto our game until you know how to do a bunch of different things, okay? Even though we're using MailPilot, your final version, your final project that I'm going to give you the details for that probably next week or the week after, where you can combine with more than 1 person, let's say 2 people, other 2 people, will be any game you like based on the technologies you know. So I'm going to give you some components, some tools, and then you can build whatever game you want, right? Now, here's the thing, and I'm going to warn you, please don't bite off more than you can chew. I say that kind of every semester. You kind of make something, and Jay's laughing at me. But I give you this stuff. I say, here's what your game is, and someone has a lot of ambition, and they try and make something that's crazy. And you might say, Tom, I don't want to make anything crazy. I just want to get my marks and get out of here, right? Yeah, well, if only that was the truth, right? What ends up happening is you get together, you get excited about what you can build, and then you don't have a path, and you just keep writing yourself into a black hole, and then you're in a corner, and you don't know what to do, right? You don't know how to finish a game. You don't know how to make stuff work. the time is up and you don't have enough left, have a lot going, but you have some really cool stuff. Some cool stuff, but it's not a complete game. Please don't do that. Make sure you hit all the requirements here, because that's what I'm looking for. And if you notice, there's marks for everything, for UI, user interface, for functionality, for everything in the game. Player control of an avatar. I made it an avatar instead of just a plane, because it doesn't have to be a plane game. It could be some other kind of game, right? It could be a vehicle or even a character. The challenge with the character is it's like they're walking on, there's no platforming for this one. It's not a platformer. This is a side scroller or a continuous walker or whatever you want to call it, all right? So you can look that up. It doesn't have to be where the character jumps, okay? That's a different thing. When you incorporate physics, that's a different game, okay? So please don't include physics in this game, all right? Well, I'm asking you not to try not to. If you really want to, it's up to you. But it's just going to increase the complexity of this thing, and the time you have, you won't be able to finish, chances are. When I say AI for step F, 1F, I mean like it's random. A random AI, right? Your AI isn't really AI. It's like random placement of obstacles. You don't have to make stuff that shoots you, okay? You don't have to make stuff that follows you, okay? You don't have to do that kind of stuff. All I want right now is a random placement of AI, and it has to make sense. So please don't allow things to, like it says here in the bottom, it says, ensure that your enemies interact with each other, you know, in a believable manner. So i.e., if your enemies are cars, they shouldn't overlap like clouds, okay? By the way, I put that in because of a vast number of car games that people have handed in. And I'm just going to say for this semester, no car games, okay? I won't accept them. Random placement of items to collect and or obstacles to pass through or over. People miss this one. Like, it's random pickups. That's what I'm talking about. Random treasure, random coins, you know? I mean, okay. And I've seen some space games where in space, you see a gas can, okay? Please don't put a gas can in space, all right? Just doesn't make any sense. I'm just saying, right? Put something else in space. Put, like, you know, space stations in space. You know, put something else that makes sense. You know, a gas ship, you know, a fuel ship, something, right? That you can get stuff, but not gas cans. And don't put, like, you know, bunnies. All right, like any bunnies in space. Bunnies die in space, like, typically, unless, like, you know, you're playing Pokemon Go, and then they exist anywhere. Get rid of that Pokemon Go. It's a virus, huh? All right. So I'm just saying. So it has to try and make your game make sense. I mean, if it's funny, okay. All right, you know, if it's meant to be funny, please run it by me and say, do you think this is okay before you get going on it. Scoring system. Scoring system is really all about, you know, I collide with something, I gain something, or I lose something. We need to figure out collisions, and that's part of this thing. I'm going to show you how to do collisions between objects, right? The player must have a life counter and health status, almost like some kind of, you know, heads-up display that shows you your life, you know, some kind of life counter or heads up. It could be that there's a little life counter that goes on top of the player's head, right? It's up to you. You know, you can do different things to make this effect. Some people have used hearts. So you get a full heart for a whole life, and, you know, lose half a heart. You can do different things, you know, to set up a style for your game. It doesn't have to be a number like 5, like I'm going to show you, right? Sound effects for collisions and enemies and collecting points. Okay, so basic sound collisions. You know, sorry, basic sound effects. Internal documentation, I mean, I've shown you last week what I'm looking for from a UE doc perspective, where I want you to document everything. We're going to continue with that this week. External documentation, this is where your partner can really help you out. If you're on your own, there's quite a bit of planning and stuff that I want you to do with this game. The reason why is because, and by the way, I could take it out, but if I take this planning step out, it'll just, you know, you'll bury yourself. You'll make something and you won't know what you're building, all right? What this step does is not because I want to make it a pain in the ass to give you external documentation, but rather to show me what you're planning. So I'm saying, whoa, Jay, you're building something that's massive, right? I love what you're doing, right? I love what Jay does, right? I'm just using Jay as a name because he's our visitor in our class today, right? And you know, but holy crap, you're not going to finish, right? And then Jay might say something, you know what? You're right, but I want to try anyway, right? And that's okay. But at least we talked about it, and there's something to talk about with your first. You know, when I talk about this with you next week, I want to start looking at your concepts next week, right? Notice that there isn't a separate mark for like a milestone, like your concept, you know, week 1, and then your final version week 2. There had been a version that I did that with, but for this one, just because of a compressed time schedule, I'm not going to do it. So you get 2 weeks. I don't know when it's due. You know, I mean, it could be like the Monday, like it says the July 25th. We may have to move that date, be slightly flexible. I want to see how the class is doing to make sure everyone is successful. I want to make sure everyone's good, right, with what we're doing. And then whew, we got this out of the way. Now we can start off our project. And the learnings you're going to use from this one, if you wanted to take this one, this assignment number 4, and use it as your first level out of your project, which is going to be 3 levels, you can do that. You can use this as your first level. Then all you have to do is build out your second level and your third level and add some other details. So your project doesn't become a crazy project. This could be like milestone 1 and maybe 2 of your project, right? If you wanted to go there. I have known people who have started off with this and they scrap it and they do completely something new for their project. That's okay too. You have to gauge it for yourself, how you feel comfortable. Do you want to do something brand new? Do you want to use this as your project? I will allow it. If you wanted to go with, you know, whatever your side scroller is, and then your final version is just an enhanced version of your side scroller with all the fixings and the animation and everything else, we can do that. I'm going to show you other things to do with your project, but this could be something you want to do. So external documentation. And I've given you an external document template that you can use. Share your files on GitHub and deploy to a cloud service. But what if you can't get your cloud service working? Because in this class, I've only talked about cloud service last week, and you know, meanwhile, you would have had it for 7 weeks. So what if you can't get it going? I would accept any live site anywhere. As long as the site is live, I will accept it, okay? For now, for this semester. So if you deployed it on the school server and I can get to it, I'm good. If you have a small site at home that you want to use and I can get to it, I'm good, right? If you want to put it on Heroku or Azure or someplace else, you want to make your own VM somewhere on DigitalOcean, I'm good, right? Whatever you want, I don't care, right? But it has to be live. If you don't do it live, you lose 4 marks, right? So that's kind of a negative for you guys, right? Here's some optional game features that can help you. Empower the computer-controlled enemies to fire bullets. So they just fire bullets straight down at you or straight across at you. That's pretty simple to do. 4 bonus marks, right? Include a final boss monster. This is much harder to do properly, right? So I would avoid doing this first. Add power-ups for the player's avatar. So, you know, you get extra speed, the shields, some kind of other things you can do with the player's avatar. Again, a little harder to do. I would say this is, again, these two kind of are in the same league in terms of getting it to work properly. Lots of testing involved here. Give the player's avatar the ability to kill or destroy computer-controlled enemies. That could mean bullets. That's not as hard to do. And that might be like number 2 for you guys to get that done. So do like one of these maybe, and then one of these, so you can fire back, right? And then this is the easiest thing to do. For 1 bonus mark, get a soundtrack going, right? Like, you know, do a soundtrack, 1 bonus mark. That's like built-in marks. That's like free marks for you guys to get the soundtrack going. Animate the player's avatar as he controls it. Again, add a walk sequence, tilt left and right. So if I move my plane or whatever the thing is, you know, actually make it look like it's tilting left and right. There's many weird ways of doing that. And you can use other tools like Blender and stuff like that to actually create all the sprites for you as you turn left and right, right? And we'll talk about that later on for assets. Or just get assets that turn left and right from, like, you know, the asset store. That could be easy too. That just means you have to work with the assets to make sure they animate properly. Allow the game to scroll in any direction in response to player's control. So not just, you know, left and right, but up and down, left and right, all ways, and the game world is much larger. I would really avoid doing that if you don't know what you're doing. Like, that can be very challenging to do because it's still got to scroll continuously. You're moving constantly, right? But it means you're moving in one direction, wherever that direction is. And in any direction means that you have to work with vectors, right? And that means math. And if you don't know about math and you're not that great at it, please avoid this one. This is like the black hole one that'll kill you, along with, you know, the boss monster and the other one, right? But I'm giving you them as a suggestion. And there's others. There's other suggestions. Like, if you make it very beautiful, the game is beautiful, you make it look nice and has good sound effects and good playability, I'm going to give you a bonus. It's not just about, you know, what I'm putting in here. But please note any of the extra options you put into your game, because I want to give you some bonus marks if you put extra work into it. Again, an external document you need to submit up on eCentennial. Everything is eCentennial, so there's no physical documents we're going to share with each other from now on. Okay, I'm not sure if what you did with the other professor. I don't do it that way. A link to your project files on GitHub. So you need to have GitHub working. A link to your live site somewhere. I'm going to put that in place. And your project files zipped and submitted, right? So external document, your zipped project files. Please do not give me RAR files. I won't accept those, all right? Or some other kind of compression. Zip, 7-zip, WinZip, something. Use zip files, okay? Please, just to keep it all the same. 15% of your final mark, 20% deducted for each day, but I'm going to be a little bit lenient on that one, just because it is what it is. Questions around the side scroller, right? I know people don't know what to ask right now, because when they look at this thing, they've never seen it before, and they don't know what to ask. Well, I don't know what questions I have, Tom. It looks like I won't be able to do it because I can't even do my slot machine, right? So bear with me. We're going to build it out starting today. So you'll be able to do this one. I think you'll have more luck with this one than you will with slot machine because I can't demonstrate slot machine. It's impossible. There's just no time. Yes?
Do you have an example you can show us right now?
Yes, I do have examples. I got lots of examples. And you can download them yourself. So here, if you go up online and you want to look at an example of stuff I've done, if you just go under my GitHub, so that's GitHub and then / I think it's Ciliopoulos, that's me. So not the school GitHub, but me, right? And if I look at repositories, and if I look at Mail, there's MailPilot Final. Okay, so this MailPilot Final. If you download this one, there's also version 11. Typically what I normally do is give you version 11 from scratch. This is a very old version. Take a look, 2014, a couple of years old, right? So some differences from then till now, all right? But if you were going to run this thing, like MailPilot Final, if you're going to run this thing, this is a great example of all the code you would need. And notice this is version 16 of my MailPilot, right? That I kind of built up from scratch with everybody in, together until we got to this, right? So if I was going to download this thing, let's download this thing really quickly. So let's download this thing and make it run, right? And I'm going to download it. I'll put it on the desktop. I'll put it in COMP397 just to give you an example of what this looks like, and we'll run it locally, right? Yes, I always have examples. I try. I've had enough time now that I can give you examples of all kinds of stuff finally, right? So how does this thing work? Now this is a Visual Studio solution, but it doesn't really matter. The one thing we need to do here is you need to run this. You need to run Light Server. It has to be run in a server because we're using sprites. Okay, so that's one thing I need to get you to know. So what I need to do is I want to pull up my terminal for this one. And again, this is using terminal or command prompt. And I'm going to drag and drop this version down in here, not the outer one, but this one here from Visual Studio, right? And of course, it would be nice if I actually put a CD there. How about that? How about them apples? Huh? Because first you have to do CD and then, to get there. It works with both Windows and Mac. If you do this, by the way, it doesn't have to be just a thing. So there I am. So there's MailPilot 16, and you can see the assets with indexed HTML. And I want to do light-server. And when I do that, it should work. This is MailPilot. Now remember, this isn't the game that I'm going to build with you 100%, but I've built it out, right? So this is kind of the final version we can get to if we have time. Probably we won't have time. But you see the little buttons, kind of going. Same button class. This thing in the background, you might be like, what is that? How does he do that? It's just a sprite that just goes like this, and it's got transparency. So you just see the background ocean, right? It's a trick. All of stuff we do with games, they're all tricks. It's all illusions, right? So if I play this game, here, I can't show you, but there's sound in the background, right? You can't hear it because it's up here. Someone's playing it, right? So if I go instructions, you see a bit of instructions. This is like the bare minimum instructions. I could have worked harder on this one. I can play the game, and then it talks. You got a little bit of lightning in the clouds, and then what I can do is I can't fire my gun, in this level, right? Because I got to get to level 2, right? But you can see this is kind of the same kind of game we're going to make, but a much more simpler, version that I would say is much more primitive than this, right? And you might say, why primitive? But because there's so much work involved here that you don't understand, right? So, and do we need to make this? By the way, I've played this game so much, I'm probably going to get, okay, dead, right? But you can see that even if I die, then, okay, there's level 2. Oh, and I see I have a little bit of explosions, but I can actually do the firing bullets thing. And now there's another plane that comes at me, and you can see how this goes. But it's a game that can last. It's a continuous scrolling game. And then if I die, you see I've got not a number because I haven't been able to store my score because I'm playing it the way I'm playing. So anyways, at the end of the day, what I want you to think about is this is the kind of game we're going to make. I'm going to use almost the exact same assets to make this game. And you guys have seen the assets around. These aren't my assets. These are assets that I've actually used when I made this game in Python using Pygame. And before that with C++. And with a bunch of other systems, so for example, on Android and on iOS and every kind of system you can think about it, I've done this game, right? If I try again, it just takes you back in here. But I invite you to take a look at this thing. You can download the package. There's examples of how this thing works, and there's some same kind of code we're going to be using is right in here. The only thing is that I've moved away from this way of doing it, and now I'm using more of a full state machine with a scene class, which I developed a couple of semesters ago. scene class does not exist, we're going to make that together. So that's really what's it in a nutshell. That's what we're building over the next several weeks. And it might seem like, wow, that's nothing, Tom. Okay, let's do it with me, and let's see if you think it's nothing afterwards, right? But that's really it. So that's what we're building for. But instead of you going up and down like I'm doing in my game, you're going to go side to side. I want you to build a side scroller, not a top scroller. Please don't give me back a top scroller. That would not meet requirements. Yes. Oh, okay. So that's it for this one. Let's talk about some other stuff now. If we look back at what we were doing last week, right? And again, you remember that I had under Centennial College, and again, I'm just going to filter with COMP397. We did this lesson 8. Okay, here's what we were doing with lesson 8, right? And lesson 8, we had a few scripts. One of them was in the core, we put this game.ts file, and notice that everything is in the global scope. Well, we really have to deal with that. That is something that, with even in my Mail Pilot game or in other games I made, when it's in the global scope, bad things can happen, and anyone can change your score or do weird things to your game. You don't want that to happen. You want to hide the variables in your game and encapsulate everything, and we're going to use a namespace for that. So that's one of the first changes we're going to make in my new version. But first, I want to clone my repository. I'm going to clone my repository and make a new one that I'm going to call, COMP397 Summer 2016 boilerplate that we can use as a boilerplate first before we even get to the Mail Pilot piece, right? Just a boilerplate to get us going with the scenes and everything else. And that's the first part of what we're doing today. Any questions before we begin?
Should we clone yours or ours?
You can go ahead and clone mine, and I'm going to clone mine anyway, and I'll show you how to do that. All right. So how does cloning work, right? Well, we have a project. My project is this one, right? And what I recommend to you is this: fork me. I mean that in the politest possible way, by the way, right? I mean it. Click the fork button here on the side and fork my repository. What this will do, will copy this repository in your GitHub account, right? And then you have nothing. There's nothing for you to do with me, right? This is your account that you're gonna fork, right? So when you fork it, you'll have the exact same thing, but instead of Centennial College, it'll say your name or your account name. Okay. Once you've done that, you click on the clone or download button. All right. I don't want to download. I want to clone. Why? Why am I cloning? When I clone, you get to keep my commits. When I download, the commits are gone and there is no more Git repository, right? So you're not starting from scratch. You get to keep all my commits and you get to add your commits on them when you're working. Okay, that's what I want you to do. We're going to remember, we're talking about a different way of doing things today on GitHub. And one of the ways we're going to do is we're going to talk about things like how do we manage a project, a large project, like this can be a larger project. How can we use issue tracking? How can we do pull requests? How can we do milestones? How do we do all that stuff, right? Because GitHub is not just a repository that we use for backups, or for sharing information, but also for to use for projects. And this is one of the most popular tools for web projects out there, whether you're doing games or something else. Remember, the stuff I'm talking to you about is not going to be just for games. I want you to take it and use it with your web projects, right? That's why I'm telling you, we're using Visual Studio Code, because most often I don't use Visual Studio for web projects. I use some light editor like Atom or Visual Studio Code or Brackets or something else, all right? Because Visual Studio, it's really a lot of it's for ASP.NET, all right? We use it for that. Some people use it for everything else, but I'm saying the most modern web developers use it, some kind of light editor. Okay, so I want to clone. So first I need to go here, and under my clone or download, you can see that there's a bit of this, the URL or URI from my Git repository. Let's click on this little button here that gives me a copy to my clipboard. All right, good. Now, I'm going to navigate. So I've got to pull up my terminal or command prompt, and I want to navigate to where I want my directory to appear, my folder to appear. Well, obviously where I want to put it, and I'm just going to kill this Mail Pilot Final Master because I don't need, I was just for demonstration purposes. Where I want to put it is here in my COMP397 folder next to my lesson 8. I'm not going to touch lesson 8. I'm just going to make another, instance of this thing by using a clone. All right, so I'm going to go again. I want to go to my 397 folder, which is this one, and I'm going to go CD space and then drag this folder into my terminal or command prompt, and then press enter. When I do that, I see that I have my other lesson 8 in there. That's all I have. And I'm going to use the command git clone. This is how easy it is, right? and then paste your URI and press enter, right? And if it doesn't work, like for example, hey, lesson 8 already exists, right? It says lesson 8 already exists, right? But you don't, I mean, I have lesson 8, you don't. This is what you would do, right? That's why it's giving me that error. For you, you won't have lesson 8, so it'll put it in there for you, right? And if you named it the exact same way, put it in another folder somewhere. Here, let me put it in another folder and I'll show you how it works, okay? Let's try this out, and then you'll see how this thing works. So COMP397, you remember, the other thing you can do is also, you can also with clone, if I go git clone by itself, you can see that there is the general form, git clone, the URI, which is the repo, right? And then the dir, which is the directory. So I can specify another directory for my my repo after the repo URI. Okay, so I don't have to accept the default URI. Let's try that command again. So I go, actually, let's just clear the screen first because that would be very much better so you can see everything. So I'm going to clear. So this is a new command you're learning for git clone, right? I'm going to clear and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to kind of pull that up. Here it is. And then at the end, I'm inside my COMP397 directory, but I want to call this COMP397-summer 2016, and then it's going to be boilerplate. We're going to use this over and over again. Press enter. And it clones it into that folder. So when I do a list, you can see now that I have 2 repos. I have a COMP397 summer 2016 lesson 8, and then a COMP397 summer 2016 boilerplate, which I just made. Right? I did it with command prompt, but you can certainly do the same thing with your desktop tool. If you have your desktop GitHub tool, if you're more comfortable with that, you can do it. It's much more difficult to do this with Visual Studio, right? Because you have to go through the commands, and you have to go clone directory. It's a little bit more challenging to do. Okay, but you can still do it. It's not impossible. Okay, good. So I've got this thing. Let's take a look at the operating system level. What do I got? I got this boilerplate. Here it is, right? And it's identical to this. Okay. Here's what I want to do, and this is what I want you to do. I'm going to make version 1. This is my old code. This is the code that we're our base code, right? We don't really have 0.1. We don't have that version yet. And by the way, if you're worried about versioning and doing all that stuff, if you look up online for GitHub, there's some great tools on for GitHub to learn, what it's about. If I want to say, I want to do revisions or a version, a release. So if I go git release, right? How do I do a git release? There's something called creating releases and user documentation, right? One thing to note is, so in releases, we're going to do this. One thing to note is I want you guys all to know about semantic versioning, right? Semantic versioning, if I click on semantic versioning, then I copied it. Semantic versioning gives you an idea of how to do versioning. So the version looks like this. This is your major release. This is a minor release. This is a patch. All right, that's how we normally do it, okay? So when we do versioning, we're going to start off with 0.1, so a minor release, okay, in our case. I'm not making patches, right? Patches would be if Aaron, as an example, found there was a problem with my code, and he put up an issue, and then I took his pull request and merged it. Don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about yet. If I took his merge request and I merged it into my pull request and merged it into my main branch, and then I took his code and fixed one of my issues, that would be a patch. And I could patch it up and say, now I'm at 0.11, right? As an example, because we have a patch for 0.1, okay? We'll try these kind of things, and we'll work with them over the next several weeks. It's not something that you're only going to see one time. So it's not going to talk about it today and then forget about it forever, all right? It's not going to be like that. So take a look at semantic versioning. You can get this link, again, semver.org, and it gives you information about what everything means and some really, really good information about how to do it, okay? So why use semantic versioning, and they give you frequently asked questions and a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people use this kind of stuff to make sure that we're good. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to do the version stuff. Notice on the top here, you have commits, right? This is lesson 8. You have a branch, one branch. You have 0 releases. We haven't released anything, not even a pre-release, right? 1 contributor, that's me, right? But if you guys add stuff in, you'll see that you'll have 2 contributors, me and you, when you start adding your stuff in, all right? All right, let's get back to this. So I've got this branch, right? Now notice that you've already forked my branch on yours, all right? This is some of the challenge that I have, right? Right now, if I want to see my my lesson 8, if I go CD, COMP397, summer 2016, boilerplate, right, and a presenter, you see that I'm on it shows you right here, because I'm using a special terminal type, that I'm on master. If you're using Git, the Git bash that's built into, that comes down with your GitHub desktop tool, you might see this as well. However, sometimes we won't. And what I want you to do is do this next command. So this is the command number 2 we're learning today, right? Git status. And what it says is, I'm on branch master, right? So I'm on the master branch, And what I'm doing with it is, you know, I've got all my commits, and it says that nothing to commit, working directory is clean. I want my working directory to be clean when I make a new branch, all right? I never want to make a new branch if my working directory is not clean. By the way, what am I talking about with branches, right? Well, again, if I was to go to the to Git, and I've got a little link for you under courses, I've got this thing, the Git book. This is a great little tool resource. Let me just refresh this. This Git book is a full book that this gentleman here published on Amazon, right? So it's all published, and you can buy it. It's called Pro Git. It's free. It's a full book version up here. And when it talks about Git branching, step by step, it'll tell you how to use Git. So the whole manual on how to use this thing. If you really wanted to read about Git, how to do everything, it's right here, right? And this is some really good supplemental reading. Okay, here's an idea about what a branch is. Here's my initial commit, right? And as an example, maybe that's not a great idea. It's more like this. Here's my initial commit, right? And what happens is, notice that the arrows go backwards, right? This is my next commit, commit number 2. Then I go to the next commit number 3, right? What happens is, I may decide to make an extra branch, right? And I'm going to go down here to show you. There might be an extra branch that I can show you, that because they talk about branching, you know, and they make the other branch here. Okay, here we go. Here's my extra branch. So here's my master branch, right? And here's my testing branch. The master branch keeps tugging along. That's on the development, and then someone else makes this testing branch. Maybe you want to check out some new feature you want to add. Like example, I want to add a new font to my game, right? My master branch could stay the same, and I can do an experiment with my other branch that doesn't affect my current branch. Okay, it doesn't affect my current line of development, if you will, right? When I decide that it's a really cool feature I want to add, I can merge the branches together later on. Okay, if I have total control, I can use the merge, git merge, in order for me to do that. But for you guys, if you want to contribute to me, you can do that too, right? You can help me contribute to my branch. For example, if you see a problem, an error, something that I missed, or whatever. I guess we're going to do some of this today. But the first thing I need to do is create my new branch. And I'm going to show you the next command. All right, so right now I'm sitting at my master branch. So I've done a git status. So 2 commands I've shown you right now, right? Git clone, to clone the branch from your fork of my repo, right? And by the way, you can do that if you're working with a partner. You make your repo, your partner, after you're done, forks your repo, makes his own branch, right? Okay, totally different way of doing things. Okay, now for me, so I want to create a new branch because I don't want to touch the master branch. I already got the master branch going on, and what I want to do here is I want to make another branch. Okay, and I'm going to name my branch the name of the version that I'm going to go to. So I'm going to go to 0.1. Right now I'm at like 0.0. Like I'm just really like a base level foundation that I built with you guys, not even level 0.1, right? So what I want to do with this, I want to say git branch. This is the command, right? If I actually just type git branch by itself and press enter, it'll give you a list of branches. If you notice, my branch is master. Git branch, and if I want to say my new branch is going to be 0.1, I press enter. Now I have another branch. If I go git branch again, just to do a list, I can see that I have 2 branches, 0.1 and master. Are we clear? So 0.1 is the branch that I want to be active. But right now, my active branch, and this is where people make mistakes, so follow carefully, is the master branch, right? My master branch is the main branch. I want to switch to my 0.1 branch. How do I do that? Git checkout, right? 0.1. Okay, switch to branch 0.1. If I do git branch again, you can see that I'm on 0.1. Master branch, I've left it alone, right? It's left by the wayside. I'm going to start working on branch 0.1. That's the branch I'm working on. And if you notice, because I have an interactive tool, I can see that what branch am I on because of the tool that I'm using. My terminal tells me, iTerm tells me what I'm working with, right? 0.1, as opposed to master. This is a good thing. It's a good reminder of where I'm at. Okay, I can start developing now. And in 0.1, I want to do a couple things. Let's plot these things out together. In fact, let's make some milestones together so you can see and we can work together. You guys give me some suggestions about stuff that you think I should add into my to my a boilerplate. How do you give me suggestions? What do I mean? First of all, right, as an example right now, I should probably connect somehow, right, back to the remote. Right now, here's my 0.1 branch. And if I go git status, right, you see that there's nothing to commit. My working directory is clean. Okay, cool. Let me pull this into my Visual Studio Code for a second. Now remember, Visual Studio is updated. Who knows that it's been updated? All right. Can you pull stuff into your Visual Studio anymore? No, it's been taken away, right? They just did that. That's one of the new features that they kind of added a feature. I'll call it a feature. I think they're going to put it back. But in this feature of this version of Visual Studio Code, you can't drag and drop anymore. But you have this really cool idea of all your extensions, which is cool. That's something new that came in, right? And you can compare what you've got in there. But in order for you to open up a folder, you're going to go open folder. You're going to look where you are, right? And I'm going to go back to my desktop, and I'm going to go to my boilerplate, right? And pull this open. So here's what I'm going to change with this branch. My README file is wrong, right? First of all, do I even have a README file? I don't, right? Let's add a readme.md file. So I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to add a readme.md, lowercase, right? And MD stands for Markdown, right? Markdown allows me to do things like this, some documentation. One hash, the first hash is like an H1 tag, right, in Markdown. And again, I'm just scratching the surface here. I'm not expecting you to remember all this stuff. Again, it's being recorded, thank God. But for example, this would be the project name. So this is COMP397, summer 2016 boilerplate. I'm just mentioning what it is for Centennial College. There we are. Okay, so I'm going to save this. That's my new commit. Notice on the left, right, I have some issues. I have a couple of things. I'm using some stuff that allows me to get some good JS linting, right? And it's adding some additional features on my that I don't want to share on GitHub. So one other thing I need here for GitHub is a gitignore file. So I'm going to add a new file. And it's going to be called .gitignore. My gitignore file, what it says to Git is, hey, anything that I mention in my gitignore file doesn't go up on GitHub. Like, for example, node modules. I don't want to share my node modules on GitHub because you'd want to pull those down if I have any node modules. Or if I'm on a Mac, I don't want to share my ds_store, any kind of those extra meta files. I don't want to store that. I don't want to store any Cloud9 stuff if you're working with Cloud9, like we talked about last week, right? And for sure, I don't want anything in my VS Code folder, right? So if I press save, you can see that what's going to happen automatically is this count goes down, right? Because this shows how many commits I have, right? And notice that all I have now is my gitignore file and my README file. I didn't have those before. All right, in here, I want to say initiating version 0.1, right? That's what I'm doing, version 0.1. I'm initiating that version, right? And if you notice here with my my commit, I'm going to click this check mark. And over here, I can publish this branch. Publishing the branch is going to create a new branch on my repository. It'll create a new branch on your repository, which is a fork of mine, okay, for now. All right, so try this out. So if I click publish, it's going to go out. It says, are you sure you want to publish 0.1 to origin? Origin means to my repository. I want to say publish, and then it's going to go out and publish the repository. Now, if I go back, even though I've called it something totally different, right? By the way, we'll clone the repository and call it something else at the end. My final release will be called boilerplate. But for now, we're working with lesson 8. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go back here and I click refresh, notice that I have 2 branches, right? Right now, I'm on my master, but 0.1 is the new branch, okay? And if I click on my master branch and go to 0.1, I can see that I have a README file, which never existed before, right, on my branch, as well as a .gitignore file, which tells me what to ignore. That's new, that I never had before. So I have 2 branches. Okay, here's what I want to do, all right? If I go back to my code, and follow me here for a second, right? What I want to do is under issues, let's add some issues. Now you're going to say, Tom, we're already adding issues. We haven't done a piece of code yet. You're right. Here's why, right? Under labels, these are the labels that I can add, right? So if I go back, let me go back to this. If I click on issues, right now the 0. If I go to labels, take a look at labels, right? Let's add some labels, custom labels. I have a bug, a duplicate, an enhancement, a help wanted, an invalid, a question, a want fix, or won't fix, sorry, and I can add other ones. Here's another one that I want to add, feature, all right, new label. I want to call this label feature, and notice that the label is blue. That's fine, I'll accept the color, right? And create label. Why feature? Well, when I add new features in, I want to describe all the features that I want to put in to my version 0.1 in my milestones, right? And I can describe all those issues, and when I do a commit, I can say that this commit satisfies, right, this feature that I want. And actually, when you're in your commit message, you can close down an issue just like that. I'll show you how that works. It's really kind of neat, all right? Let's pull up a milestone. Now, this is where I need your help. I'm going to create a milestone, and the milestone is going to be called, right, version 0.1. Right, that's what it's going to be, right? We don't have that yet. Notice also I have a due date for 0.1. I'm going to leave the milestone due date up. I'm going to clear this due date. I don't want to have a due date, because if I put a due date, it's going to remind me. It's going to drive me crazy, right? So you can turn it off too, but for now, let's leave it off, and I'm going to click create this milestone. All right, so here's 0.1. You can see this too. If you actually went up on my GitHub now, you can see that I have on COMP397 Summer 2016 Lesson 8, I have this version 0.1. Okay, notice that if I click on the actual version, we can assign some issues. Let's make some issues. So create a new issue. Here's something that I want to do with my version 0.1, and I want you guys to help me, because this is what I'm talking about here. So in my version 0.1, I want to add a label object, right? Okay. Need to create a label object in the objects namespace. Be as descriptive as possible, please. Right? Submit new issue. Right? Now, here's the thing. My issue doesn't go anywhere, but you can make it. You can assign it a label. On the right, once I create my issue, I can say, well, what's my label? I can choose. It's a feature. So that's what one feature I want for my 0.1. I also can say, what milestone is it part of? Well, right now it's automatically part of 0.1, but you can attach it to other milestones, right? All right, let's go back to my issues. And if I look at milestones, I have one milestone, I have one open issue, and I have 0 closed issues, and I have version 0.1. Why don't you guys go up there and create some features that you want to add in? No bugs, there's no bugs yet, or at least we don't, actually there is a bug. We're going to talk about it in a second. Aaron figured this one out last week, and we'll talk about how to fix that bug in a second, okay? But I want you guys to go into this one up here. So this is good practice for you. Centennial College, COMP397, Summer 2016, Lesson 8, my version, not your fork. Notice I also have, by the way, if I want to see who forked me, it's here, right? Here's my forks. If I click on forks, it'll take me here. And if I go members, take a look at this. If I go to members, right, it'll show me all the members that forked me. So there's obviously some people in the class that did not follow my instructions. Please fork me on GitHub, right? It'll give you a good chance to follow along and check it out, right? Just telling you, these are the ones, right? Okay, so you can always follow along and find out who forked you, and you can actually go and find out who that person is, all right? So if someone's copying your code or something like that, you can totally find out, right? Anyway, so let's go back. So what I want you guys to do is go to my version and add some more features, right? So what are the features you think I need, right? For example, I know I'm going to add a feature right now, and this is before I do any work. Why am I doing this before I do any work? Because as I commit, I want to commit towards a feature, and my milestones will update what percentage of my milestone is done for 0.1, right? As opposed to, I'm just working away, and then I won't get it done, right? Ever. Let's do this again. So I want to do a new issue. I know that in 0.1, right? I think in 0.1, we need to add in the whole idea of the state machine. I need to add the state machine. That's a big one, all right? So add a working state machine, right? That allows switching between scenes, right? I want to add that in. So that's my new feature. I want to make sure that my milestone, you can tap on version 0.1. I can look at my label as a feature, right, as an example, and I can go submit new issue. There's a new one, right? So it's a new feature, right? And again, I can go back to my issues. I got 3 issues. Look, I got someone submitted an issue, right? Anyone can do this, by the way. And if one's duplicate, right? So if someone made a duplicate one, me as the owner, no, it's good. Me as the owner, I can go back and I can close it off, right? So you have the ability, that's why I asked you to do this with me, right? So I can go back to this feature and I can say, this is a duplicate, right? So I can you know, put a label on this thing and say duplicate, right? And I can say something like this is a duplicate issue, right? And then close and comment, done. So that's closed, that's a closed feature. Now if I go back up to my issues, right? You can see that I only have 2 features, right? So you can totally control, as the master of your repo, you can totally control what features, what enhancement, what bugs, if they're closed or not, the whole thing, okay? Let's add some more. So I want a working state machine. I also need a working scene class, okay? I need that. So this is part of the stuff I'm doing. So new issue. So you know, create a working scene class. And it's got to be a scene abstract class, right? Okay, I need to do that. Again, from a label perspective, it's got to be a feature, right, as an example. And from milestone, I want to click my version 1 and submit new issue. There we go. So that's my next one. So I've got a few issues here. What else? I need to add in a scene, and I want to be very specific. Kind of a start scene. I want to create an end scene, right? Take care, Jay. Thank you so much for coming by. So a menu scene, kind of a play scene, and an end scene. I need those scenes, right? If I don't have those basic scenes, those 3 scenes, a menu scene, a play scene, and an end scene, I don't have any scenes to demonstrate. It needs to be part of my boilerplate. I'm going to add them in as different features. I'm going to go new issue, right? Need a menu scene. Okay. Submit new. I'm going to get from my label. Here's my feature as an example, and my milestone. I'm going to put in my version 1 and submit new issue. Now you might say, well, Tom, this is a lot of work we're doing. We haven't done any kind of coding, but you know what? This is planning. I'm planning what I'm going to do, right? Need a working, you know, gameplay scene. Gameplay scene. There you go. So submit new issue. And if I forgot to put stuff up, I can always put up label. That's a feature. You know, as an example, my milestone, which is version 1, right? And I kind of comment and update, if you will, right? If I go back, I didn't actually do that, but let me go back and see that. Yeah, it already tagged. It's automatically tagging. Okay, cool. So I've got all these things. So I got a gameplay scene, a menu scene, and notice the numbers: number 6, number 5, right? Number 4, number 3, and number 1. There's number 2, but it was deleted, right? So it's gone. And I can always go back and look at it because there's closed issues, right? 1 open, 5 closed. 5 open, 1 closed. Let's add another one. I need one more, which is need a working game over scene. Game over scene. Submit new issue. And I want to, again, make sure that I put these in place here, right? So my milestone, it looks correct. Submit new issue. There we go. Can you think of anything else I need for my boilerplate, my initial boilerplate that I'm missing? Well, guys, I'm asking for that so that way we can get them. Huh? A preloader. I add preloader to my, that's good, thank you. So new issue. That's an enhancement because my main game object is still there, but then, oh no, it's a feature. Add a preloader to the main game or the core game file, core game.ts file. Right, there we go. Submit new issue, table feature, and then milestone version. Submit. Here we go. Well, one more, which is I want to. So I've got that piece in there, the preloader. I need to add in. I got my buttons, so I'm just trying to think of this through to make sure that I've got everything as I'm graphing things out. Oh, I want to encapsulate my game.ts file in a namespace, like I talked about, right? So, and that's really that's not a feature. That is an enhancement, right? So new issue, encapsulate game.ts in a core namespace. Okay. And that I'm going to put enhancement, different kind of thing, and it's still going to be on milestone number 1. Submit new issue. Okay, cool. I've got a bunch of them, right? I've got some bunch of issues. You can see I've got 8 issues on this one. Here they are. I got one enhancement and a bunch of features that I want to add in. And the enhancement is number 9. Maybe I'll do that one first. Doesn't matter which one you do first. But if I look at milestones now, you can see that I'm 0% complete. I've got 8 open issues I got to complete. And then as I complete them, my completion will go higher and higher and higher until I get 100%. And then I'm at version 0.1. Okay? Let's do the first one. And then we'll pause for a small break. All right, pretty soon. Because I know we've gone for a while. And I apologize. I know we're going, and I keep talking, and it's nonstop. But we'll see if we can pause for more than one break like last time. Okay? All right, so how do we do this? Again, I'm in Visual Studio Code, right? I've added in my issues. Issues have nothing to do with my Visual Studio Code. It's all the stuff that I'm doing in a collaborative environment up on GitHub. On Git itself, it doesn't know anything about this. All I know is I'm on my 0.1 branch, and I've got my stuff to put in. Let's take a look at the first issue, and I'll show you how this works. Under my core, I've got my game.ts file. Here it is, right? And I want to encapsulate my game.ts file, with the namespace core, right? One thing I want to do is I want to update this. This is July 11th today. I'm still going to say 0.01 because I really didn't. It's not 0.1, 0.1. I would say initial version of the boilerplate. So that's one thing I'm changing. And down in here, before I do all my lets and stage and everything else, I want to put in my namespace. Remember, I'm using TypeScript, so I can do something like this. Oops, namespace, and then we're going to call it core. Open bracket. Now the good thing is I can just take this close bracket here, cut it, go all the way to the bottom, right? And I want to do it within my window event listener, right? I want to include that. If I don't, it won't be able to access my init method at all, right? It won't see it. And now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to select everything, right-click, and format my code just so that way it's indented properly. There we go. So it's indented properly. I've got my core namespace in there. And what I want to do is, this is my first commit, all right? So this is how you do a commit against a feature or an enhancement or a bug that's in your code, okay? This is how you do it. So I go to GitHub. I've got my game.ts, and I'm ready to do a commit. So I did my first enhancement. I do plus, staging, I stage it, and now I can put my message. My message is very important here, right? And what I want to do is say something like this. Added core namespace to game.ts, right? And I'll say closes number, what is it, 9? My guess? Closes number 9. Let's take a look. So if I look at my issues, I can see that number 10. Number 10, sorry, number 9. No, I was right. Need to create, someone else add that in. Someone else added a feature, need to create an asset object in the object's namespace. Okay. Please mention whether it's what kind of, is that a feature or an enhancement? So whoever had that in, please go back in there and change that. I can always go in there and see what that is, right? But what I want to do is I want to go against number 9, right? So here I am. So against number 9, I click the check mark, right? And then I go here and push. What this does is it goes out to GitHub, puts progresses my branch, and if I want to look locally just to see what that looks like, I go git status. I can see that my branch is clean, everything is good, right? I want to, if I go git log, I can see that my last commit is added core namespace to game.ts closes number 9. Because I put closes number 9, it associates with the issue number 9 and closes that off automatically. Right? So your commits are really important if you put them properly. Let's take a look at this. We're not going to talk too much more about this next time. I mean, I'm going to be doing it, but I'm going to be doing it a little faster than I'm doing it right now. I'm just showing you how to do it so you can do it for your own projects, right? Okay, let's take a look. So I'm going to go back to my issues, and you can see now if I did it properly, if I refresh, okay. Oh, hey, well, how come it's not closed, right? It should have. It says close issue number 9, but it didn't close off. So I can do it manually. If it didn't close on my own, right? It says added the enhancement label 5 minutes ago. He added a version 0.1 milestone, whatever. And I want to look at this one, this encapsulate issue. But down in here, I can say that last commit, right? This one. See, look, it says added core namespace to game.ts close number 9. I tried that, didn't work. Probably because you guys are all doing it too. So I'll say added last commit, cleared this issue, right? So I'm going to say close and comment, right? Close and comment, right? Now, if I want to reopen it, I can, right? But look at my milestone now. This is what I want to get to. You can see that number 9 is closed, right? And if I look at my milestones, I'm 12% complete. So it keeps track of all your versioning for you. The more of your open issues you kind of create, it'll stop me from closing off my project. I'll keep working at this until my milestones are more complete. Okay, let's add one more. Let's add that label class we talked about. Did I put a label class? So if I go look at my issues, so I said need a working scene abstract class, need to create a label object in the objects namespace. Let's do that next, and then we'll stop. All right? How does that look? And by the way, this was done 14 minutes ago. We've been working 15 minutes now or so on this whole thing here. Let's go in here. So remember, how do I add a module? When I add a module, or I'm adding a file to my module, I'm going to go into my objects folder. Here's my objects folder. And again, this is in the 0.1 namespace, 0.1 branch. And I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to go New File. And I'm going to call this thing label.ts. Okay, label.ts. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Command-Shift-B to automatically run the transpilation process. So remember, it's part of my objects module. Now, I'm using the module keyword. I might as well keep using it. Module, namespace, same thing. So I'll go module, objects. And inside my module objects, I'm going to export a new class called label. Right? Here's my label class. And it's going to extend, right, the create.js.text object. That's what it is. That's the text object that belongs to create.js. And I need a constructor. My constructor needs to pass, whenever I extend something, I need to pass the requirements of this class, this object, to my superclass. So I need to go super. And now it tells you what it's looking for, a text string for the label itself. So that's the label string. So label string. I don't have this yet, but I will. And then the next one is my font. Right? Now my font's broken up into two parts for my label. One part is the font size, and the other one is, right? What is it? The type, or the style, or whatever you want. Font family, font type, right? So it's font family plus font type plus a little bit of a space, right? So it's going to be font size, right? Plus a space. Right, this is what's going to be sent there, plus font family. I don't have those yet, but I'm just kind of putting them in. And this all, unfortunately, to be all made a string, all this has to be in a bracket like this, or else you'll have a problem. Okay, so all that has to be in a bracket, comma, and then the next thing is the color, which is my font color, the Canadian way of spelling it, right? All right. Well, I don't have all those things. Where do I get them from? Well, I get them from my constructor. So I get my label string, which is going to be of type string, right? My font size and my font color and my font family. So font size, when I ask for font size for my label, which is also going to be of type string, right? Plus my font family, which is going to be of type string. And let me just take this away so you can see it all. And then my font color, which is also going to be of type string. All of it's going to be of type string. String, string, string. That's my constructor. But notice what I'm sending to my super constructor, my superclass constructor, is a combination of the same thing. I'm not sending anything different. It's still getting the text, the font, and the color, and they're all optional components. If you notice, the question marks there make it optional. All those ones, right? But I'm sending them all. So when I create my constructor, I create my text object. That's what I'm doing with all these things. Now, here's the other thing I want to also add in. And by the way, there's nothing wrong in your constructor by doing some of this to make it more visible when you create your constructor, especially if there's a lot of parameters, right? You may want to do something like this, right? As an example, font, label string, font size, font family, font color, and then maybe, I don't know, remember X and Y coordinates? We probably want to put those in there too, might as well, right? So X, which is a number, and then y, which is a number, and then, you know, do we want it centered or not? Oh wait, don't we have an issue about that with our button? We do, and we have is centered, right, which is Boolean. Okay, cool. Those are all the things we need in our constructor, and now there's going to be some of this stuff that it gets automatically created. Like we don't want to go, you know, this dot label string is equal to label string, this dot font size is equal to font size. We want to have TypeScript automatically create those objects for us, and in the constructor we can use the public, depending on if we want to make it public or private. Now, do we really care to share this stuff outside of our class? Hell no. So we can make it private. We can put the private access modifier in front, right? So we're never going to share this, right? And might as well, not to all of them, but to some of them, right? Private, private. Our font color, definitely private. For X and Y, I don't want to create any kind of stuff because I already have X and Y because I'm extending the create.js.text file, the text class. So X and Y I already have as instance variables. So what I want to do for X and Y is when I'm inside my constructor itself, I want to do something like this. You know, the standard this dot X is equal to X. I want to be able to do that, and this dot Y is equal to Y because I have already inherited the X and Y from my superclass, right? I don't need to do anything like that. Okay, now remember what happens when I tell in my constructor, so this is my constructor that ends here, right? In my constructor, if I put in private or public, it automatically creates my instance variables. It's like creating a property, a shorthand for creating the property. And if I was to show you what this does, and if I was to show you the JavaScript version, so I'm going to bring this up again, and then just look at I can do a split pane up here, split the editor, and if I focus on this one and I click on the JavaScript version, you can see that this is the version that's JavaScript, and what I do is I'm creating the objects. This dot label string is equal to label string, this dot font size is equal to font size, so I don't have to type all that out. I just declare the variables or the parameters inside my constructor, and all this stuff is done at the same time. Otherwise, it'd be double the work. I'd have to declare it in my constructor, and I'd have to do this dot font size equal to font size, blah, blah. So it's a shorthand, right? Notice that this dot X is equal to X, and this dot Y is equal to Y is there, right? Because I declared it separately down here. All right, and I'm just showing you this so that you understand why I'm doing the stuff I'm doing, not necessarily because, you know, there isn't another way to do it, right? Okay, so I've got my class. It's kind of simple, and what I want to do is I'm saying, well, if I want this centered, then I want to basically, you know, centered means I want to center my label across how big it is. Now, we're going to run the same problem as we had before, right? I don't know how big my label is, right? I don't know, so it's going to guess. And this is where it's going to have a problem. This is the issue that we're talking, issue tracking, right? So because I don't have a size, because I'm extending my create.js.text, I haven't created my object yet before I'm trying to center it. So how do I know how big it is? I can't possibly know because I haven't instantiated it yet, right? So guys and girls, to keep this one simple for this semester, right? For now, what I want to do is to see whether this is centered. Let's just take it out for now. We'll add it in as an enhancement later, right? Let's just do one of these. And there's a reason for this, because I want this thing to work from the get-go. So now what I want to do is not just this X and Y, but I also want to put in here, so this is, you know, assign the, assign coordinates, label coordinates. But I also want to set that all my labels that I use with my label class, they always are labels that are centered in the middle. The registration mark is in the middle of the label. So I'm going to say is that this.regx, right? And this is something that we have to do separately, right? Because we have to kind of figure out how wide the label is. I'm going to put it in there without a thing. This is the problem that I'm going to have. Is equal to this get measured bounds. How do I get measured width? How do I get measured width when I don't even have an object yet? This is where I'm running into the problem, right? Times 0.5, and this reg y, watch, is equal to this dot get measured. It's the same problem I had before. Get measured height, right, times 0.5. It'll compile, but it still will give me an error, right? Let's put it in. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's add some comments because we need to do that too, right? So I do that. Here's my my UE doc that I put in here, right? By the way, if you want to see where that is, there is. If I go to doc, these are all my install extensions, right? So I believe it's called word count, Corona, maybe doc with a capital D, makes a difference. Oh, document this, here it is. It's called document this. So if you want to do what I can do, grab document this from extensions, all right? I kind of put that, one person asked me, I think Kevin, you were the one that was asking for document this, right? So you can grab document this, and then you can do the same thing I'm doing here, which automatically adds the documents to your file. All right, in here on the top, I can say this is a generic label class, you know, for our project, for the game boilerplate. Right, whatever. I mean, you know, you want to put some kind of comments in there. Notice that I don't have any methods. It's just a constructor right now, right? So the constructor creates my label. All right. I could also put my namespace in there. I'm not going to document my namespace any more than it is. So this is step one. This is step one of my my adding an object to my project. Step one. Remember I talked about this. There's three steps. One step is making a document that belongs inside of a folder that's probably associated with the name of the module. So module objects is number one. And when I do that, I need to use the export keyword to expose any objects that are inside of my module. Otherwise, they will not be available outside of this closure. I'm creating a closure, right? And inside this outside of this closure, if I don't put the export keyword, it won't be available. Number one. This is the first step. Step two, I need to include this inside my index.html file. Let's do that. Otherwise, it won't be part of my project, even if I wanted to. Now, again, there's other ways of bundling and other things, but they're more complex. Let's go to my index.html. And you can see that I've got my button. Maybe right underneath that, I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm going to add in my objects.label, right? .js. Again, if I look at my objects, I have label.ts and label.js. I only care about the JS, not the TS, because TS is not compatible with browsers. Only JS is. Okay, this is step two. Step three, right? I want to go into my core, and I go to my game.ts, and I'm sorry, I meant my reference.ts, right? And where I have my button, I want to add in a reference to my label. That's what I meant, because I've already done it in my core. So I go label.ts. Now I have a reference to my label. Okay, now I want to make sure that, I mean, it's automatically compiled because I'm on a compile watch. But if you wanted to manually compile, you have to press Command-Shift-B, or you can compile on the command line. One of the two things. Okay, let's see what I can do with it. Now that I have my label in my game.ts, notice on the bottom I've been using a label, right, which is this one, my hello label. Let's see if we can do this hello world without using a createjs.txt, but rather a label. All right, now let's go to the top, and you can see that this is my test label, hello label, and inside my hello label, I'm going to do objects. And if you notice, I have label right now. Here it is, and I get code hinting and information about what it's about. This is a generic label class for the game boilerplate export class label action. All right, so I'm going to do label. There it is. That's what that is. And this now I'm going to have a problem because my hello label requires other stuff, but it didn't error here. Why? Because my hello label is a createjs.txt object, so therefore I can put it this way. But remember that anything that's extending a superclass, my subclasses are always larger than my superclasses because they include additional features, additional specifications. They're specialized version of my superclass. That's what they are. So let's go and change this. So again, I'm going to kind of close this off. And in here, I'm going to go objects.label. And now I'm missing some stuff. Hello world is cool, but I've split this up, right? I said 40 pixels, comma, Consolus is my family, comma, my color. I'm missing my X and Y coordinates. That's 320 by 240. And that should suffice, right? I don't need any of this. And that's what the idea of a label does for me, right? It kind of, reduces the amount of work that I got to do, right? Now I got a problem. I know I have a problem, but I want to point it out to you first by checking this out. So you can see this if you can look at this. This is what it will look like at the end. Why? Because I've taken my create.js text and I've extended it into my own class. The first thing we do with TypeScript is this stuff, understanding how to use TypeScript in an object-oriented environment before we create any game or anything like that. Because if you can't get by this stuff, guys and girls, the rest is going to be really confusing to you later on. You need to understand this part. Who does not understand this part that I just did? Please put up your hand. Okay. So what do I need to do to show you? Okay. So remember, just to recap, right? Really quick. So if I go back, remember that I created an object inside my objects folder called label. My label object extends my create.js.text object. My create.js.text object is defined inside my API documentation. If I go to easel.js, and if I look where that is, here it is. Here's my easel.js. So I'm using easel.js for this one, right? So far. If I look at docs, right, you can see that under easel.js, I'm looking at the text object. Here it is. Here's my text object. And here's my text class, and this is what it requires. It gives you an example of how to use this class. Okay? So what I'm doing is I'm taking this class and extending it and adding my own features. So what am I doing? I'm making it so that when I use my label, my simple label gets me to create a constructor so I can do things in one line as opposed to doing things in 5 lines. So far, that's all it does, right? And also moves the registration mark in the middle, right? That's going to fail. Well, we're going to talk about this in a second. All right, so that's the first step. Let's take a look, and now we have to test it to see if it works before we say that we've taken care of this issue, right? Okay, let's go back. So I'm in my folder here, and I'm going to go liked server. This is just a little server that I'm using. You can also use HTTP server. You can use any kind of server that's local to your system if you want to. You can even double. Right now, there's not much. You can probably almost double click on your machine on your object, and it'll probably work there too. All right, so I'm running this thing, and I got hello world, but no button. Okay, remember the button is an issue, and I'm not sure if. Let me just refresh. Ah, there it is. My button came back, right? Let me see what this looks like. Remember, sometimes it caches too, right? So I want to take a look at my console and see if I got any errors. So right now, it looks like I got no errors in my console, right? And to know that I'm in the right version, I'm going to go to sources. Here's something to note. And if I kind of look and see what my sources are, I go to scripts, and I got a core, and then go to game.ts, and I see this stuff. But here's what I can't do in my console. I can't do something like, change my, my stage. So I can't say stage is equal to something else, blah, blah, blah. It won't know what stage is, right? Well, ASD is not defined. But let's see if I go stage and press enter, right? Stage not defined. Because it's hidden, it's encapsulated. But if I go something like this, right? I know I called it core, right? If I press core and press enter, I have an object. Now here's the thing. I'm not exposing anything in this object. If I want to see something in my command line to see if I want to expose something, let's say, for example, I want to expose the stage. Remember that namespaces and modules, I can use the export keyword to expose stuff outside of the module, even to the command line, right? How do I do that? Well, if I go back to my code, right, and if I go back to my game.ts, and let's say, for example, I want to expose the stage so I can see it, and I can do some troubleshooting. I can go to the top, and where it says let stage is equal to stage, I can just say export. When I do export, and I press save, and it compiles, and now when I go back to here, as an example, here's my hello world start, and if I type in something like core, because core is my namespace, I see that I have one object, and I also have stage exposed. If I look and I want to inspect the stage, I can certainly look at this thing. It'll tell me how large it is. It'll also tell me what the canvas is that's connected to it. Here's the canvas with the element, right, and so on. This is the kind of work we want to be able to do. Expose elements we want to troubleshoot, and then hide them again when we don't want them anymore, right? Like I would never want to export. Why would I, kind of show the stage to the command line? And this I have to. Why? It gives me more control. And when you make a more robust application in the real world, you want to encapsulate all you can in a closure so that the scope is closed. So no one can go in there and mess with your variables so easily. They can do it, but it's more difficult. Okay, any questions before we pause for a break? All right, well, let's do that. Let's pause for a break. When we come back, I'll do the commits, and I'll put it against my issue, which is, I think, number 1, right? Okay, let's take a short break. Come back in 10 minutes. Okay.